This morning we're going to talk about steps 17 and 18 so that we can get through it and complete it. As I said, as I mentioned, remaining videos will be coming out for those of you who want to complete your site. For those of you moving on to like Web 1.15, you need to complete your site. Do it, in between now and the start of next semester if you have Web 1.15 next semester, because we build onto the project. You're only going to be graded 17 and 18 yet, and then a small final. Like I said, the final, it's not going to be overwhelming or anything of that nature. It's not going to be a test where you got to do it on your own time, and you'll be fine as far as that goes. In 17 and 18, what we're working on is, I'm going to start with 17, and 18 just piggybacks off of 17. 18 is a lot of just copy and paste code, to be honest with you. But it's more about you getting your head around these concepts than getting the technical aspects 100% down. In 17, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our timeline. And what we're going to do with our timeline is instead of using a plugin, there's a lot of really cool timeline plugins out there. In real life, if I were doing this for a client, or if I were even doing it for myself, right, as a non-learning, I probably would go and grab a timeline plugin and do it. The reason we're not using it is because one of the last things that, especially those of you who are moving on and will not be continuing on in the web development program, one of the things I want you to have an understanding of is custom fields. In WordPress, we use all kinds of plugins and information, and our primary thing in WordPress is posts. Even pages are posts, as we learn. The thing about a post, when you create a post, is you really have some limited information. Let's go to new. Right, you have a post title, you have post description, you have excerpt. In this case, we have the post grid plugin installed, so we have some options around that. And then we have categories and tags. Well, the problem with that you face is a lot of times you want more information. You want to gather more information. And we could easily do it through just building a list inside of our description if it was just display information. But one of the things you want to keep in mind when you're building any application, whether it's a website, whether you're doing an IT project, even if you're setting up a router pattern, like a template for a router, or for a server, or for users or something, right, is you want to be able to add information. You don't want to put all in here, name, birth date, age, so on and so forth, right? Because it becomes difficult to take that information and use it to do, disseminate it out into analytics, metrics, things like that, as if each piece of information has its own field, we have age, so we can actually write something and say, show me only people between the age of 30 and 35. As where if we do it in here, we can do it, but boy, it becomes hacky. Meaning we actually have to write code that goes in, grabs all the information in here, breaks it apart, looks for special things, then hopes that it finds the age, and it's not good data. At one point in the class, we talked about good data, right? Building things. The best thing that you can do is to normalize it, meaning we take an address and instead of a name and address, and instead of putting Brian Savage at 1122 Boogie Boogie Avenue, Reading, Pennsylvania, 19608, what we want to do is we want to break that information down into fields, into searchable fields: first name, last name, street address, city, state, zip code, right? We want to break all that information down, because then what we can do is we can use that information on a broader scale more easily. And also we have better data, cleaner data, meaning Reading in our database 6,000 times. I'm pretty sure that we would find R-E-E-D-I-N-G, R-E-A-D-I-N-G, right? Or R-E-D-D-I-N-G, right? People will spell it differently, especially because they get thrown by reading Reading, right? If we have it in one place in our database and we just reference it from those 6,000 records, it's always R-E-A-D-I-N-G, right? Because it's spelled in one place and we're pointing to it. The whole point of this is that it's really important to be able to take your posts and add additional information where necessary, where it makes sense. And the timeline is a great example of this. We do have a publish date in our posts that we can use, and that publish date is it's intended to be used to make a post and say, I don't want this to be shown until December 15th, or to know, wow, this was published back in 1972. It's about the post as a whole. And so we don't want to use that as a piece of information to attach directly to the post, right? To be a part of the post, other than this is when it was created or published, kind of thing. WordPress offers something called custom fields. Custom fields are fields that we can just essentially create or leverage inside of a post. And then if you consistently use it in a certain type of post, you have good data. The problem with using custom posts out of the box with WordPress is you have to consistently make sure that people are going down here, selecting the custom post that they're going to put in, and entering the information, and there's no real driver to ensure that they're going to go and complete that custom post. Instead of using just WordPress's out-of-the-box custom posts, what we use and what we're using for this is a plugin called Advanced Custom Fields. Don't worry about some of the plugins you see if you don't have them. Remember, I'm the teacher, as my son would say, as he's trying to remind me that I need disciplinary action. I put in some extra stuff here and there because I've been trying to explore different things, to be honest with you. Make sure right up to the last minute, even though I was confident a month ago that I want to teach you advanced custom fields. For all I know, something between now and then could have come out that I wanted to explore quickly because it's my job, I feel, as your teacher, to teach you not antiquated stuff and to do my best to kind of find what's on the fringe, what might be out there and being used when you are done, not what's most popular right now. A great example of that is I'm pulling my advisory committee together and a bunch of developers to have a conversation about, do I teach jQuery, do I teach Angular, or do I teach React? And what those are, as we learned, are JavaScript libraries. And jQuery has always been, for a very long time, the most popular. But it looks like these two other ones are starting to gain some traction. And it's like, how do I position you, who's going to be going out into the industry maybe a year from now, a year and a half from now? Am I doing you a disservice by teaching you jQuery when I could have been teaching you Angular, because that seems to be the one that has the momentum and is going to go? What we're going to use is called Advanced Custom Fields. As you know, when you install a plugin, and I'll go to Add New and just show you what it looks like so we have it. If you type up there Advanced Custom Fields, what you see is this plugin, Advanced Custom Fields. And what's really cool about this plugin is it's leveraging those custom fields that we just looked at real quick that are built into WordPress, but it's leveraging them in a way that helps us put some conditions around them, that helps us put some consistency around them, that helps us present in those post forms a way to kind of insist that people use the data, complete the data. So if you install Advanced Custom Fields, what it'll do is it'll put a menu item down here on the left called Custom Fields. There's all kinds of add-ons, really cool add-ons that you can use for this, and you can export them if you are setting up a bunch of custom fields and you're like, oh, I want to use them in other sites. You can export them and use them. If you go to the Custom Fields configuration, in here what you'll see is we create what's called field groups. What these field groups are, add new post so we can look at it fresh that way. What these field groups are is essentially exactly what they sound like. What you're doing is you're creating a group of fields, inputs. It could be one, it could be many, and you're kind of lumping them together. And then you're coming down here and you're saying that this field group belongs to, and in our case, use this field group in anything that has the post type of post. And we're taking it a step further because we don't want this in other post submissions. We want it for our timeline posts. So we've created the category called timeline in our posts. And we're saying post categories equal to timeline. And what this will do is it'll put, you see we only have one field. And what it'll do, and we'll see in a second, is put this field into any post that we check off the category timeline on. We have all kinds of options in here, and I'm showing you and so that you can reference as well in the video so you can see what you want. We want to call it event date. The field name is actually in our HTML, right? We can use a class, we can use a ID inside the element. That's what you would use inside either the class or the element, is the field name plus the name. The type of field, we want it to be a date picker. You always want to use a date picker. Why would you want to always use a date picker? Why not just let them put the date in? Anybody have a good answer for that? Cumbersome, okay. User experience, I'll take that as an answer. There's a bigger answer I'm looking for.
The form you're going to put the date in.
Consistency.
Consistency.
Data integrity, right? We want our data to be consistent. If we give them a picker, right, now they have to put it in the format that we want it in, and we store it the way that we want to store it. The nice thing is what we do have is we have a way to control as well, and this becomes important to us in step 18. We have a way to control how it stores the information as well that's input, and you'll see why that's important when we go over to step 18. Because in step 18, we're pulling data, and we want data to look a certain way so that we can do certain things with it. As a matter of fact, so that we can do this with it. Bring our timeline over from WordPress into our HTML site. All right, so back to this. Honestly, those of you who are getting into this and really digging the web stuff, and this is a cool one to play with. This plugin is really cool to play with because, again, the more you can break the information down into pieces, the more user-friendly, the more meaningful the data is. Any questions on any of this? Have this up. We've been talking, so you'll be able to see it.
Do we make this? Because I'm pulling it up. I don't.
No, you'll make this.
I'll make those fields.
Yes.
So I'm making a database here. Is what I'm doing.
No, you're leveraging a database is what you're doing. You're not making a database. Huge difference to what you just said. I understand why you just said what you said, but I can't let that statement roll like that.
Well, you're deciding which fields go where.
You're leveraging a database. You're putting information into a database. You're deciding how it goes into the database, but you are not creating a database.
Well, how do I decide which fields? How do I get the fields in there? I didn't see.
Add field right here.
So I'm going to go and add each field.
You're going to add one field. Event date.
Okay.
Does that keep asking questions? No.
Okay.
Keep asking questions. These guys will appreciate your questions when they're watching the video doing
because
it.
I didn't see you click on that. I thought, okay, we kind of like went to all these fields. How did we get all these fields in?
No, those fields are what make up that one field.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense now.
And I appreciate you asking, right?
Now I understand why you said I didn't make the database.
Yes. And I'm not about that. I'm just being straight up, right? When you're talking IT, you need to talk specifically what's going on, because if somebody hears you the wrong way and they hear you say you're creating a database, next thing you know it, the wrong person is over in their web hosting server thinking, where do I create this database? You know, they're in MySQL trying to create a database thinking, yeah, and it happens. That's why we've got to be very specific about what you're doing. Any other questions before I move on from this? So to review, we come into custom fields. You're going to create a new field group, add new. You're going to name it, timeline, yada, yada. You're going to put rules around it, and those rules are going to be the ones where post type must be post, and post category must be timeline. And rewind the video, or rewind, listen to me talking like we're on VHS. Slide back to the settings. They're in there, and you can check them out. To just review, after you create your group, so we have timeline data. Inside timeline data, here's the settings that we've put. We create one field. That field is event date. Hit pause if you need to. Here's the information. The big thing to pay attention to is we're not presenting this information unless the category, the post category timeline has been selected. and that'll make sense to you now. So we go in, and to create our posts, when you come in, what we're doing is we're creating a post for each timeline entry. The way that the timeline entries are going to be is you're going to start on the day you're born. Put your birth date in. Oops. Let me back up here. I actually put in a couple extras. I was born in 1971, December 23rd, 1971. That Thanksgiving, before I was born, D.B. Cooper, how many of you heard about him? Right? He's one of the only people to ever jump out of 727 at like 30,000 feet, whatever it was. And what he did is he made off with $200,000. They never caught the guy. They don't know if he died or whatever. There's 200 grand laying in the woods somewhere. Who knows? Whatever. But the point is for each birthday, find an event that's within that year. Something that happened in the world. Or it could be something personal. But find something that happened within the year that you were born, closer to your birth date, the cooler. On your birth date, really cool, right? Just to see what was going on. 72, if you get really interested and you get rolling and whatever, you can put in more entries. 72, walk on the moon. Concorde Supersonic Airline. 5th birthday. So the point is 0, born, your 5th, your 10th, your 15th, your 20th, for some of us, 25th, for very few of us, 30th, 35th, 40th, 45th, 46th this year.
What's the name of the website? Is it onthisday.com?
Onthisday.com is one you can use. I'm not going to tell you what to use. You can use onthisday.com. Honestly, it becomes a little difficult. Onthisday.com gives very minimal information. You might be interested in taking it a little further. You don't have to. You can see what I have in here. You can go out and use Wikipedia. We want some images. Not all of them have to have images. You need to have at least 2 or 3 images. That'll be in the rubric as far as that goes. Not all of them have to have it. But essentially what you're doing is you're putting together a timeline based on every 5 years of your life to include your birthday and where you lived. That's what this information will be here. And then one event that happened inside that year around your birthday. And that'll be explained in the assignment for you. Any other questions around that?
You say within the year before or after, or
it don't matter. It don't matter.
Don't matter.
Remember, the point is getting data to make the timeline, right? Keep that in mind. But I would encourage you, first of all, be careful, because it becomes very interesting when you start doing this and you put some time in just out of curiosity, right? Just out of like seeing the things that, to me it's just the idea that we've gone from a 13-channel black and white TV to a flat screen online video, my lifespan. It becomes really interesting as you look at it too. And I encourage you, explore. That's part of the idea of this, is that you're looking inside as well while you're learning technology. So let's go back to creating the post. Very simple. Post title is 15th birthday. You'll put in your title. You put in your information. When you do an image, do the image inside content, and also use that image in your featured image as well. Okay? The reason I say to do it is your featured image is the one that'll show up on your timeline inside of your WordPress site. The image that you tuck away in here is the one that will show up in your HTML site when we do step 18 and we do Ajax and pull the content out of your WordPress site into our site. That's all the information that you really need in here. And it doesn't have to be real elaborate. You're not going to get dinged because of lack of information. As long as the point you saw, I think, in some of mine on my birthday, I just have the city name, period. And I can respect that. You need to create a category. If you don't have it created, you create the category. And if you watch, when I hit timeline, when I assign this post to timeline, my field shows up. When I uncheck it, it goes away. Shows up. When I click in it, I get a date picker. I can go through and I can select when and put it there, and there I have my date. Make sense? Your timeline, this little box, your metadata box here, I actually, when I first did it, I can't remember exactly where it was. I think it might have been down here or down in here. These boxes, you can drag them around and put them in different places, and then they'll stay there. So just know that if you're looking for it here because you're watching the video and you're like, what the hell? It's because I drug it there.
Do we have tags?
What's that?
Tags?
As far as tags go, you're more than welcome to always add tags. Tags is something, it's a great idea to do it if you have some meaningful tags to add. In this case, honestly, I just don't want to overwhelm things. You know what I mean? But you're welcome to add tags. You're absolutely welcome to add tags. Remember, it's categories and tags that we use to weave our information together, to connect our pieces of information together, right? Yes, sir.
I noticed your category tag timeline is not under I. You don't want that.
What's that?
You notice how we put family under people?
Yeah, where I don't want to use categories. It's ideal to do it that way, right? It's ideal to do it that way. But if you think about it, now you're talking about managing potentially 100 plus entries. Those of you who really get into it, those who are just doing it for the grade, you're still talking about 15 to 20 entries, right? Now you have to go through and manage each one via category or tag, which becomes a nightmare, a data management nightmare when you think about it. What we want to do, because we're talking about a timeline, we're talking about time sensitive, time relative, right, things, what we want to do is leverage that data via the time. So you can think about putting this time data, event date, that really is our category and our tag when you think about it, because that's how we're going to manage the data. We're going to choose to see the data or not see the data is through the date, right? So it's just one more way, in addition to categories and tags, that we can take data and posts and break them down into different forms and manage how they're used in different forms, just like we did with people or with family. We only pulled family members out, right? With dates, we can say, only give me stuff between this date and that date. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Acceptable answer, sir?
acceptable.
Um,
C+.
All right, cool. I do appreciate, keep the questions coming. I do appreciate it. And like I said, I'm sure the people, especially online, will appreciate it very much. What do we get as a result of that? Well, we'll get there soon. If I go to I, and again, we're keeping this as simple as possible just to get the basic fundamentals across, right, for you to understand. So rather than getting real complex and writing all kinds of deep code, what we're doing is for I, we're explaining, we're presenting all of our timeline posts, right? Because all of time makes us I. One of the things, in addition to your birthdays, right, up to present, you're going to put your next birthday. Mine is in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 46. You're going to put something relative to that happened, right, this year. We all have a birthday either within the next year cycle. So something that has happened, right, you're going to include in that. Me, it's the, I'll keep my opinions to myself. I think my picture selection says it all. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put in your birthday 5 years out, right? You're going to continue the trend and go out 5 years. Mine will be 50. I'm freaking believable. And I have to add in here what I will add in here for me, and by the time this video is posted, I'll have it added in here, is I want to do my CompTIA. Actually, let's just go ahead And let's do this. I'll go out. I want to do this. This is how cheap I'm going to be. This is how cheap you're allowed to be. Look at that. What's that? I have the information that I want. Put that in there. I usually do it in text form, right? So I don't bring formatting over. I'll go ahead. Come on. Holy moly schmoly. I want to make sure I grab an image. Save image as. Good, it's a JPEG. That's what I want. I'm going to close that out. Less clutter. Come back over where I'm doing my post. I'm going to go to visual. Put my picture right there. I'm going to say add media. I already have it in here actually, so I'm just going to select it. I'm going to insert it in my post. There it is in my post. Come down to my featured image. I'm going to set it as my featured image as well. The date that I want to complete it by. My goal is, so we're 2017. My goal is by August, the end of August in 2018. Got my date in, got my data there. Yes, sir?
Does it matter on the formatting right there? Yeah.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. I'll do this. I'll go in here. I could make it any size that I wanted. In this case, I'm just going to let it ride the way that it is. Yes, sir?
Does the picture have to be a JPEG?
Nope. It can, as long as it works, that's all I care about, right? That's all I care about. Nothing kinky or weird, though, okay? I mean, you on the side, you can send me that. No. I put that in there. I saved it. And bam, there it is. It appears. And I'm going to show you how to make it appear in these pages then, right? But there it is. I come out here to my HTML site, which is step 18. And bam. Well, it went to the bottom because of the way I'm ordering them, but there it is. Make sense? Questions? So, how do we get it to appear in our WordPress site? Well, let's start looking at, first of all, how we're going to do our timeline. And again, not the best way. What I'm going after is broad concept, to get the concept of what we're doing, right? There's much better ways of doing both 17 and 18. Much better ways of doing these steps. But I don't want to overcomplicate it. I don't want to make your last week and a half in this class sheer hell by making you, right, go and do all kinds of craziness. So if I go into who I, of course, who I encompasses everything, right? As a whole, as people, right? Everything that has happened to us and everywhere that we are looking to go is a part of who I am, right? So that's how that works. Then if I go was then, all we want is information from the date I was born down. Well, the way that WordPress works, the way that this plugin works, without getting absolutely nuts and crazy, right, it's really hard to trim off the data in here. So what we're doing is showing you next best thing. And you have to look at this as though if you were working with a client. Not only if you were working with a client, but if you're working with a client that has a very low budget and you have very little time and you need to get the job done. And sometimes it is acceptable to do exactly what I'm showing you here. They want was then, right? So most people, we want them to read from our birth up because we're talking about who we were then. You know, of course, when I go to who I will be, all we do is flip-flop that, right? It's still showing all the data. Yes, there are ways that we could trim the data out, but to do it this way would be just, it would be over the top for you guys right now. It'd be too much. you wouldn't learn anything because you would become too focused on trying to figure out how do I make this work kind of thing, right? And then am now. And am now is a good example of how to trim data, and you'll see that. Am now only includes today's date plus a year and today's date minus a year, which we'll see that in a second. Because who we are now, who we are today, this second, right, is profoundly impacted by what's just happened and where our immediate goals lie, right, where we're trying to get to. And so that's the concept behind am now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to I, and I'm going to start there. And I'm going to edit page. And what we're going to see in here is shortcode. Of course, we're putting our quote up. Need a quote on top of the I page. And then we're using our plugin display posts. And in our plugin display posts, which I need to check and make sure that we installed that. I'm pretty sure we installed that in 16. I will double check on that. And just in case we didn't, I'm going to hop over real quick and just point this out. There's a plugin out there that we call that's called slow down, Brian. Display post shortcode. We didn't install that? Okay, so at this point you're going to install that. You're going to go ahead and install that plugin. There's a reason we're using this one instead of the Shortcode Ultimate. And this is where WordPress becomes a challenge for people. This is where you really have to work at getting good at WordPress because there's so many plugins out there. And one will do one thing, but it won't do another thing that you need it to do. And you want to be careful that you don't end up with like this big alphabet soup of plugins where you're using a plugin to do one little thing that could have been done by a plugin that you're using to do 15 other things in your site. And so you have to be very careful. You don't have to be. There's no real, other than efficiency, confusion, avoiding confusion, people entering, knowing what shortcodes to use and things like that. But in this case, to pull up the timeline, we are using the display post shortcode plugin. Install that at this point. And this is what it looks like. I'll make sure that I'm marking the video like I normally do before I push it up. I'll make sure that you have links to the different pieces and parts for the things. Basically, just install this plugin. It has no settings. Honestly, what it does is it just kind of extends the WordPress platform a little bit to allow certain shortcodes. There is documentation. I'll make that available as well in the lesson so you can go out and look at what the plugin for both of these plugins that we're using. Attached in the lesson will be documentation, things like that, links that you can go to explore these. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back and you can see what we're using. And honestly, to find what to use, this whole piece here, which you are welcome to copy and paste. I'll put it in the changelog so that you can get access to this and copy and paste it. But what you are going to have to do is you are going to have to make sure that when you put it into your page, this one does not have an ID, so we're good there. You are going to have to make sure that you do your quote on the top of the page, right? And that goes. We've done enough quotes now that I think you should be able to do that okay. And you're also in the changelog will be these styles to include in the bottom. Because honestly, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're taking these posts and we're moving them around on the page to look the way that we want them to look. If I take the style out and I hit update, and I go out and I look at it, I get the normal posts. So that shows you what that CSS is doing. What that little bit of CSS is doing is it's taking all those parts and pieces And it's telling them to move around the page and to do different things. And I would encourage you, right, go ahead and is it part of your grade to know exactly what CSS is doing? No. But I would encourage you to take a look at it and try to figure it out, play with it, make changes to it, do different things. Again, the big goal of this is the concept of using data. That's really what I want you to walk away with in doing this. I'm going to go on to was then, actually, I'm going to go on to am now. Am now, the shortcode is going to be a little different. We're actually doing two. And this is creatively using plugins, right? You're going to be limited. In IT, those of you in IT, get used to this. The better you know your system, we call it hacking, we call it workarounds, right? I call it getting the job done and moving on to the next one so you're done at 5 o'clock on Friday and you can go home from work and spend the weekend at home, right? You'd be surprised. Sites from Sony to Toys R Us to whatever, you're going to find hacky codes. You're going to find hacky in almost everything. And router configurations, what do? The Russians are hacking your database and you have a solution that you can write in a hacky manner. Do you write the hacky manner or do you sit back and wait 3 days until the good code is ready so you can put that out there? Put the hacky code in. And you hope to hell you get back to putting the good code in. The problem with hacky code is you always have the best intentions of getting back to it, but so long as it's working, something else needs hacked. So you just keep moving forward as far as development goes. If you have a good development team, you'll get back to the hack code. You'll take a certain percentage of your team, and I call them sweepers, and those are people that you have come up behind your development team and pick up on comments and notes and know to clean things like this up. This is really just calling it twice. This one is calling it the first time. It's saying to give me data based on the meta key event date. Focus on what we created, which is that advanced custom field, and to only show 3. And to do it in a descending order. Hence we end up with those 3 that I have. Down here, basically I'm offsetting it by 3 again as well. Hang on one second. I'm not including the date field. The reason I'm not including the date field is because the date that this plugin pulls is the post date, not the date that we entered. So as you study it and as you look at it, you'll be able to play with it. Those of you who are really interested in moving forward, you play with this code, right? You go out, you look at the documentation that I supplied you around shortcut, around display codes, display posts. That'll be included in the lesson. Go out and take a look at it and play with it and see what you can learn. Honestly, WordPress, one of the cool parts is a lot of times, a lot of these plugins, you can do amazing things with them, but if you don't take the time to go and explore them, there's no way that you're going to be able to do it. So we'll go out here and we can see I got 3 and 3 because I limited it to 3 posts. And really, I just want stuff around today, right? Stuff within a range of today. If I went in and I put in a post that were closer to today's date, some of these will get bumped. With the am now and was then, will be, the only thing that you're changing really in the shortcode, order descending, and that's for will be. And if I go to am was then, order ascending, right? So we're just really changing. We're going from oldest to newest or newest to oldest, and that's all that we're doing. Again, you'll notice that the CSS is in the bottom of each of the pages. And I think overall, it won't be that difficult. I really don't think it'll be that difficult for you to do. It's kind of putting you out there a little more without so much guidance, but that's the best way to learn. break it, get pissed, swear at your monitor, yell at your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and then have to go back and apologize and explain to them that the only reason you were angry at them is because your computer wasn't listening to you. See how lucky you get for the next couple days after that. It's not going to happen. So learn how to control your anger when it comes to that. So then the next video that will come out, and we're not going to start into that right now, is the results on how we get from here, from our WordPress site, to here. Right? Over to, put a funky little loader in there just for, right, fun. How do we get over to here and get these posts? That'll be the next video. But what the product of what we just created in WordPress, what that product produces for us to get to over there is the JSON, and we'll talk about that in the next video.